I have here a stack of New Testaments. The one on the bottom is the one we'll be looking at later today. When I did a tour of the books on my desktop a few months ago, a viewer asked me to show this, so that's what we'll be doing today. But to give you a sense for size, this is a shirt pocket New Testament that was given to me when I was 6 years old by a Sunday school teacher. It's a King James version and some kind of imitation leather. It's held up pretty well. The first page is missing. I bought this NIV, 1984 NIV New Testament. It's a Zondervan in bonded leather. You can see how it's unbonded itself along the edges. This was purchased back in the 1980s. It's actually very nice. It is in the NIV, so there is a downside to it. But it's held up pretty well. This is the New Testament that I carry with me in my backpack to work these days. It's a 2007 English Standard version that I bought used in the same bookstore that I bought the book that we'll be looking at today, which is a 1946 Revised Standard Version New Testament in genuine leather by Thomas Nelson. This book was originally owned by a lady named Ruth Walk. And her name is on the front cover. Inside the New Testament, Ruth had this cross, which was citing 2 Corinthians 5:7. And then she had a little newspaper article. And I guess because this was paper clipped into the New Testament, it tells about the event at which she was given the gift, the present of the New Testament. That's just speculation on my part. I don't know. Apparently she was sponsor of the Epworth League, and that was a youth association in the United Methodist Church. And it was for younger people, since she was the sponsor. I'm guessing she was born in the 1890s. The New Testament was given to her in 1949. So it is 7 3/8 inches tall, 5 3/16 inches wide, and only 7/8 of an inch thick. It is in a single column format. Column is 98 millimeters wide. There are about 63 characters per line. And you can find pages in here where there are 33 lines. There are no notes at the bottom. So 33 lines per column is the most you get. The pages are 181 millimeters tall, 121 millimeters wide. So that's 7.1 inches tall and 4.76 inches wide. The margins vary a bit, but towards the top of the page, they're around 13 to 16 millimeters here. That's about half an inch. And the same here at the bottom. And the inner margin can be as much as 12 millimeters, again about half an inch. And the outer margin is 11 to 13 millimeters here. The font, uppercase characters like the C and the J in Christ Jesus, those are about 12.5 points tall. The lowercase letters are more like 11 points. So this is opposite to your typical Bible font, where the lowercase letters are actually larger proportionately to the uppercase letters. I'm comparing with Times New Roman. I kind of use that as a standard. The line height here is 13 points, so that works pretty well with the 12.5 point capitals. It doesn't feel too cramped. Tracking looks pretty good too. You see that you do have verse numbers inside the text. It's in this paragraph type format, so they're not real easy to find, but they're not very, very difficult either. It is not line matched, but we'll talk about the paper in a minute, and I think you can tell that the opacity is quite good. You can see some print from the opposite side, but it's not very bad. The Revised Standard Version is a relatively literal translation. I may show my chart here. This is the 1940 1946 Revised Standard Version New Testament, and I scored the 1971 New Testament, but they aren't radically different. Even though the Revised Standard Version is fairly literal, added words that the translators add to make sense of the original language, they are not in italic font. Ink here in this book is fairly black. It's nice and dark, but it is broken in places. So the printing is 1940s printing, and it's not always the best in quality. There are references at the bottom of the page, like so, and those references are in about a 7¼ point font, 7.25 points. I mentioned the paper a moment ago. It's pretty thick. It's about 60.5 micrometers thick. And on the basis of that, my guess at the paper weight is 55 GSM. It could be 40, it could be 60, it could be 65. It's somewhere in that area. Paper color is kind of a baby powder. It may have been baby powder originally, or it may just be yellowing with age. I'm not sure. There is really no gloss or sheen on this old paper, though. It makes for a very pleasant reading experience. There is some print non-uniformity. I'll show you an example. This happens from time to time. Back here I'll show you 2 pages. Page on the left, rather darker than the page on the right, but both of them usable, both of them readable. It's just a New Testament, the text only. You'll see there are no book introductions. The book titles are in the outside at the top of the page, and there are running headings. Page contents are at the outside as well. Let's go to something that actually has more material to it. So this tells you that chapter 2 of Titus is on this page. Page numbers are at the bottom center of the page, and there are headings at the inside top of the page in about a 12-point italic font. Chapter numbers are nice and bold and easy to find. Books begin where the previous books left off, so they're not on a separate page. There's no real gap there. And let's go back, say, to John's Gospel and show you that the words of Christ are in black. No nasty red letters in this at all. It's a fairly simple book. You can find these on eBay from time to time. I've seen them there. I bought this one. I think I paid $4 or $4.50 for it. But you see at the back you have no maps, no concordance, just have cardstock paper. At the front you'll find a title page. Here's the copyright information. This one, copyright is the 1901 copyright for the American Standard Version, which was renewed in 1929 when Nelson gave it up to the International Council of Religious Education. Then they decided to revise the American Standard Version, and this is the first revision from 1946. And this copy was printed by Norwood Press. We have a preface that explains the translation philosophy of the Revised Standard Version. And table of contents. And after that, you're directly into Matthew's Gospel. I mentioned that this is a genuine leather cover. I have other Nelsons from the same era, and they're very similar. It's a very stiff leather, quite thick, and then there's a vinyl paste down, vinyl bonded to paper here. There are art-gilt edges, so you can see that very pretty salmon color. When I picked this up, it at least portions of it, had not been read, and I could tell because I had to separate the pages. They were still stuck to each other in places. There is a ribbon marker. It's a single, just one black ribbon marker, shiny on only one side, 227 millimeters long, 7 millimeters wide. It could stand to be a little bit longer because it gets caught there in the corner. So another inch or two would have been useful. It's a sewn binding. In fact, it has overcast stitching in both the front and the back. Here's the overcast stitching in the front. Maybe kind of tricky for you to see. It's running right through there. And that tends to hold the end papers together, which are usually the first thing to fail. But as I pointed out on another book that I reviewed some time ago, overcast stitching sometimes pulls the next signature away. That seems to be what's happening here in the back, even though the book has been used very little apparently over time. It seems to be creating something of a gap there. The stresses by having the overcast stitching pulling to the outside on the signature. The genuine leather cover is showing some wear with age. Again, that's kind of strange because the book itself clearly hasn't been used much. But there's some shelf wear, there's some streaks. So something kind of hard rubbed against it in places on the outside. The edges are showing some roughness. I think you can find better editions, better copies of this edition out on eBay if you look, but I don't think you would have to pay very much. They're not very expensive. It's nice and large and bold print, so it's very easy to read. It's a pleasant reading experience, and it is thin and small, so it's quite portable, but it's not the sort of New Testament that you can easily fit into a pants pocket like the ESV one, or a shirt pocket like my old King James Gideon-sized New Testament. The Revised Standard Version is a descendant of the King James Version, and I just wanted to show this chart here to give you a sense for where it fits in. It is, you could call it a great-grandchild of the King James Version through the Revised Version and the American Standard Version. So it's there in the box next to the two boxes on the right. The Revised Standard Version is the father of the New Revised Standard Version and of the English Standard Version, or I should say parent. And it's a sibling to the New American Standard Bible. And that's about all I had intended to say. I hope you enjoyed this, what should be quite brief review of the Revised Standard Version New Testament, which was presented by these people to Miss Ruth Walk somewhere in the United States on the 3rd of April, 1949. That's why I decided to do this video today, because this is the 7th of April, 70 years, so 70 years and 4 days after she was presented with this Bible. You can see the rust from where she attached the little newspaper clip to the inside of the book with a paper clip. Well, thanks very much for watching. Here's the overcast stitching again. And if you've enjoyed this video and haven't already done so, please remember to like and to subscribe. Thanks for your time.